Tribal sovereignty in general terms would be the right to self-determination. I think that the sovereignty of the Choctaw Nation and the sovereignty of the United States are two different sovereigns, but at the root it simply is the right to self-determine, the right to self-govern.
And the thing is, when we started this work, we wanted to have as a governing structure for our people in Norway, we wanted to have a seat at the table at the United Nations. The thing is, the United Nations is only made up of, or mostly made up of the member states, of course, and then you have non-governmental organizations that have the possibility to attend meetings. If our representative organization were to apply, we wouldn't be accepted, nor as a state, member state, or as a non-governmental organization, because we are governmental in nature. So that is part of the rationale for us to challenge and ask the United Nations to open up for true representatives of our peoples to be present in these negotiations.
My name is Will Micklem. My Tlingit name is Yan Yan Ish. I am second vice president of the Central Council of Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska. That is a traditional indigenous government with an inherent authority established by our 30,000 tribal citizens and jurisdiction within our traditional and Aboriginal territories. We are an indigenous government exercising our self-determinate powers over the last 10,000 years. We are not an indigenous group. We are not a voluntary or non-governmental or civil society organization. We are indeed an indigenous government.
Without a doubt, as we talk about this subject matter, the question is, where should we as representatives of our indigenous peoples, where should we be able to be allowed to participate in the various forums of this great body? In our opinion, we should be able to participate in every level of which that there might be an interest that affect our people, which is inclusive of the General Assembly or the closed meetings of the General Assembly that affect our interests. All these different forums are critical as they discuss subject matters that affect the rights or the interests of our people, and we want to be able to have the opportunity to engage and share the thoughts or the recommendations that come out of those forums that advise this body that would be adopted by this body that affect our interests and advocate for our interests.
Halito, Saho Chief Wat Josh Riley, Chata Ukla Mintili. Hello, my name is Josh Riley. I am from the Choctaw Nation, a sovereign nation of nearly 200,000 people worldwide with sovereignty granted by God Himself. Our nation has existed since time immemorial. We believe that no current UN body is considered the appropriate committee for recognition of indigenous peoples or entities. We believe that a new body must be created and comprised of indigenous and member state representatives in equal proportion. The General Assembly should not have the authority to approve the selections, but that authority should lie solely with the new body. Thank you all.
An independent body needs to be established, but it needs to be equally represented. There should be an equal number of indigenous representatives on the committee itself, so that there's not any weight given to one particular group or a member state, so that that all of the indigenous peoples are represented equally and fairly. There should be at least the same number of indigenous representatives for a given region. If there's 7 international regions around the world, there should be at least a representative number of indigenous people to represent those from different sections of that region. Well, I think we need to come to agreement on the process and how it benefits the indigenous people within that group. And within that, the agreements, there needs to be language that's acceptable to all of the members, so that they can become united in their purpose and not become splintered as the process moves forward.
Our status, I mean, the status that we have, the reason that we're here is because our tribal nations have pre-existing sovereignty. We're pre-existing political units. We've always been here. We've always been in our lands and territories, and that's where our sovereignty derives from. It's this this reality, this political fact that Indigenous peoples were here before the governments, the state governments that currently exist. So we're not really asking for something new or we're asking for a recognition of this reality and a status that accords with this reality that our Indigenous peoples have governments. We have institutions and authorities. We call them different things in the United States. It's very clear, we have many of our tribes have, a modern constitutional democracy with, a legislature and a president and a judiciary. But not all of our nations do. We have traditional governments. There's a range of organizations, and that's true around the world. Indigenous peoples organize themselves in various ways, and those organizations have been impacted, the way that Indigenous peoples govern themselves, those have been impacted by colonization and hundreds of years of political developments. But working at the UN is an attempt to improve the ways that our governing structures work and engage with the outside world broadly, and also with the nation states where we find ourselves right now. This gives us another forum to talk to the United States. It gives us another set of government actors, with federal actors, to speak with and raise our concerns with, and hopefully get better results than we might get if we were.
Access to human rights mechanisms.
Exactly, we have access to human rights mechanisms. A whole different range of international options are available at the United Nations than are available at Department of Interior, for instance.
We thank the advisors for the important work to produce the updated text, and we align ourselves with the statement by the National Congress of American Indians and the Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe. Regarding participation modalities, as we have said on prior occasions, Indigenous peoples' representative institutions are the authoritative and duly constituted decision-making bodies, recognized by their own Indigenous constituency. They make important decisions to secure and safeguard the rights and futures of their people, and they should have a status in the UN that's commensurate with their reality. As such, they should be able to participate, which is to actively engage and contribute to the work of the UN. This participation should not be limited to simply attending or observing meetings, but include the authority to also submit documents and proposals, make statements, and propose agenda items.
During the permanent forum, which is coming up at the end of April and the 1st of May, there will actually be two consultations during that week, and those will be the final meetings, the final consultations to iron out what we think a process should be like, and to get our views expressed to the member states on how we think that the process should go. After that, it'll be closed-door meetings with the member states only, and they will be the ones who decide on the process and how everything will play out moving forward. Our hope is that something will be in place by September. If we do not tell our story, someone's going to tell our story for us. And so we have to be the ones to tell our story to the world.
That's why we need our own voice in the United Nations. That's why we need, if we can't be members of the United Nations, if you won't let us, we all occupy the same space. You have to make up for that moral abandonment, the fact that you abandon representing us, that we have to represent and speak for ourselves at every possible level in the United Nations. And that's why we're here. That's why there's a resolution. There's the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples are looking for a status for Indigenous people, because we have to speak for ourselves. Nobody else can speak for us, because you haven't done that.